400 episodes. Who would have thought 8 years ago when I started this weekly podcast that it would last this long? But it's lasted, and you've helped this happen by being there, by listening, by reflecting along with me. This episode includes reflections from many listeners. I want to thank everyone who submitted, but I want to thank you mostly for being a listener and for growing and reflecting along with me all these years.
Welcome to the Stark Reflections on Writing and Publishing podcast. There has never been a better time for writers. More information, options, and opportunities are available to you, but navigating these requires insight. Join Mark Leslie Lefebvre as he draws upon more than a quarter century of experience as a writer, a bookseller, and a trusted book industry consultant to explore and reflect on the writing and publishing landscape to help you make informed choices on your writer journey.
Hello, Reflectors, and welcome to episode 400 of the Stark Reflections podcast. This is your host, Mark Leslie Lefebvre, and I am so thrilled this episode that I get to bring you your reflections. So some of these reflections have been sent in to me via the forums. Some have come via email, other forums that people have sent them to me. I've got some audio clips from some folks as well, and some excerpts from a couple hangouts that I did in the last couple of weeks. This is all going to be your reflections. I may reflect on things that are said and shared, but definitely at the very end of this episode, I can't not comment or reflect on something that's really hitting me hard and hurting me. And it's the loss of friendship, the loss of allies, the trade war that has been initiated between two close allies and longtime friends. I'm going to try and reflect a little bit on that. That's coming up later in this episode, my closing rant, let's call it, or closing reflection. But this episode's about sharing reflections from this amazing and awesome community. And just prior to that, I'm going to share a word from this episode's sponsor.
Monitoring sales and advertising on multiple platforms takes away valuable writing time. ScribeCount gives you that time back by automatically collecting that data and displaying it in an easy-to-understand dashboard. What once took hours now takes minutes. ScribeCount, numbers from your words, built by indie authors for indie authors. Subscribe today, get back to writing, and leave the rest to us.
That's right. This episode is sponsored by ScribeCount. You can check them out over at scribecount.com. There's also an affiliate link over at starkreflections.ca where you can check them out. One of the things I love so much about ScribeCount is the time it saves me. I was chatting with a client I was working with earlier this week, and when we were going from dashboard to dashboard to dashboard so they could monitor the effective of sale, I remembered, or I was reminded of the fact that they didn't know about ScribeCount. So I took them over to my dashboard and I showed them, okay, here are my January sales, and I can change it to this week or this day, or I can pick pick just one title to look at in that area, one series, whatever. And they were so impressed with just how easy it was that they immediately went and signed up. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to remind you of the awesomeness of a tool like ScribeCount that can save you time so you can get back to writing. So that's a huge thank you to the sponsor for this episode, but also a shout out and a huge round of thanks and applause for those who support this podcast over at patreon.com/starkreflections, as well as my coffee buddies over at buymeacoffee.com/Mark Leslie. Really do appreciate your support. It means the world to me. Thank you guys so much. I did just share it would have been on February 1st, I shared a video that I recorded in the process of getting these clips together for this episode. And it's a perfect example of something bad had happened, or something that I thought that bad was happened. It turned out I was in error. But at the moment I was feeling really down on myself, and I thought, okay, I'm going to turn on the camera, or the camera was on already, and I'm just going to share how I'm feeling and how I'm going to talk myself through this. So you get to see that self-therapy, but I think it's a really important thing for us to remember as authors when we get frustrated about the book's not selling, or you're not getting the reviews you're looking for, etc. I'm hoping that that's something that you can use. Anyways, that's in over at patreon.com/darkreflections. But I'm going to roll the bumper, and I'm going to get into some of your reflections for this episode. Okay, so I'm going to start by reading some of the reflections that came into me via text format. The first reflection is from Zachary Kai. Zachary says, I've been studying publishing since 2017 when I was 14, and I wrote my first novel. I'm 20-something now and have been continued writing and learning. Your wonderful podcast has been a primary source of discovery and encouragement. Last year, I discovered one can be highly knowledgeable yet unpublished, so this year, I'll learn by doing as much as studying. It's time to put my words out there. Thank you so much, Zachary. I love the fact that you wrote your first novel when you're 14 and that you're committed to learning, you're committed to continuing to grow as a writer. And yeah, when you get your words out into the world, it's scary. It is really, truly a frightening thing. But once you get your words out there, you're also going to learn from the experience of doing that. And I so look forward to you getting those words out there. I hope to hear from you when you have pushed the publish button and you get it out there, whether it's a short story, whether it's a novel, whatever it is. Hopefully it's something that you've taken the time and care into before you put it out in the world, because, people judge and all that stuff. But even stuff that's edited, even stuff that's gone through all of the rigorous screenings, etc., to get them to prime time, I still get 1-star reviews. I get comments saying this could have used an edit, when I was like, but I've edited 3 times by, edited by one person and proofread by 2 other people. So it doesn't matter, right? There's still always going to be those critiques, but that's okay. We end up having to develop a thick skin, but I'm so thrilled that you've been here, that you're listening to the podcast, and I'm thrilled that you were inspired to start writing when you were 14 and that you're continuing to write. That is so amazing. So thank you so much, Zachary. And this other comment came in from Birgit Constant. And Birgit, there's a prelude to the reflection where Birgit says, Stark Reflections is one of the few podcasts I listen to, usually while doing the ironing once a week or so. With a limited amount of time available to myself, I had to cut down on podcasts. Although I never was a proliferous listener anyway, but Stark Reflections had to stay. Birgit, I am so honored. Thank you. Thank you so much. And Birgit's reflection is, AI and the way it affects the book world frighten me. Readers will become even more used to the regurgitated same topics and genres. Does anyone else hear the death toll to diversity in literature and authordom? Sometimes I wonder if it's even worth the effort of researching and writing another novel, especially after seeing my sales take a nosedive last year. Furthermore, with what's happening in this world, I feel how worthless my job of being an author is when I could be helping take care of the aged, the ill, or children, when I could be working in IT with a better and more stable income as an author to keep the systems running that will determine our future and, as it seems, take over our lives, and also decide about life and death very soon. When I could be producing cheap video materials to spam television and the internet to cater for the ever shorter attention spans and restricted interest of people who live in the metaverse and no longer offline. Am I being too negative? I sometimes take hope when I look at the English-speaking book market, where not everything seems quite as gloomy as on the German one. But overall, I'm torn whether I should continue or quit. Thank you, Birgit. for sharing that reflection and that perspective. I am going to argue that the world needs you, and the world needs your writing, particularly because of the concerns you have. The idea that diversity in authordom is potentially going away. Well, you can have an impact against that. You can continue to put that work out into the world. Sales come and go. I've been doing this for long enough to see good years and bad years, and they come and go and they fluctuate, and that happens throughout the industry. But I do honestly believe that you probably are putting care and concern and consideration and love and compassion and thoughts and reflections, all those things, into your writing. And your writing being there in the world is a positive impact against those negative things that you see in the world, even against some of the scary things that are happening. Because people need books. They need that entertainment. They need that inspiration. And I understand, because I feel the negativity. I feel the gloom. I feel the quiet desperation that sometimes overcomes me. But I would encourage you to not give up on yourself and your writing, and continuing to make that positive difference in the world. Every single person who is writing and producing content for putting it into the world is making the world a better place. And you, by doing this, is making the world a better place. Yes, we can have impacts in different ways. We can care about one another. We can do different jobs and roles, etc. I completely understand that, but I do value the arts, the art and culture, and the things that we can do as writers in making that difference. So thank you, Birgit, for your thoughts and reflections. I'm sure you're not the only one who feels that way. I do want to be a bit of a voice of potential. Is it optimism? Is it positivity? Is it confirmation that you're making a positive difference, even though sometimes it doesn't feel like that? Every little spark, every little bit of light and positivity can help make the world a brighter place instead of a darker place. And I thank you for your role in doing that, Birgit, despite the gloom and the scary things that you see around you. And thank you as well for taking the time to share that with me. It means a lot. This comment comes in from Stanley B. Trice, and Stanley says, I had published several short stories that sometimes had drama and violence with sad endings. This is what sold. About 10 years ago, I grew tired of the violence in the media and what I found in popular novels. It was all a downer. I decided to write stories that are upbeat, humorous, and absent of violence and drama. I discovered I can create a story that is suspenseful and entertaining without violence. I also now enjoy reading quirky novels that are upbeat. Of course, this has put me in the minority of readers enjoying those genres. Maybe an author out there might consider writing an exciting, quirky novel that does not rely on sadness and violence as a key story element. I'm running out of books like this to read. Thank you, Stanley. I appreciate that. And I appreciate that you saw something you did not like, and you decided to write the kinds of stories that were upbeat, humorous, and didn't include violence and overt drama, etc. That's very fitting, considering what I was just thinking about with what Birgit was talking about. Is Stanley, so for one, thank you for writing those kinds of stories. And anyone listening, if you do have ideas for books that you've read or perhaps written that fit this mold, that are quirky and fun and humorous and upbeat, please do share them. Please let me know. I can share that in an episode of this podcast. Leave a comment for this podcast at starkreflections.ca, maybe even a link to reading lists or anything like that. Because, hey, like I said, writers and books make the world a much better place. And again, you can write the kind of stories that you want more of. So Stanley, thanks for writing those stories and making the world a better place, but also thanks for asking for ideas and suggestions. And I'm hoping that listeners who have some ideas of books that you may want to enjoy can share them, so that I don't think you're going to run out of books. It's just a matter, of course, the ever elusive matter that we all face is finding them. So let's see if we can help Stanley find those. And thank you, Stanley, for that reflection. Okay, this next reflection was a recording sent in to me by Donn King.
Hi, Mark. I really hate that I didn't make it to your Saturday gathering. I do much better in conversation. But in any case, here are my reflections. I had planned to write 3 books in 2024. I got one finished and published, made progress on another, and I actually started one I had not planned on concerning how to keep creating when you are a caregiver. That book has taken precedence, jumped ahead of the other 2. It should be out before June 2025. Also wrote a short story that's in the same universe. That was satisfying to get something finished. Honestly, I'm still in survival mode, so all of this is good. I have found that the key to having goals is not necessarily to accomplish them, but to give you direction and focus. And I feel like I am pursuing my mission in life, whether I meet specific goals or not. In addition to that, I took on several clients to help them publish their books. Traditional authors, you might say, who just need a little help figuring out how to format books and that sort of thing. That is satisfying, but I have to make sure I don't lose my own creative work in the process. So that's a little challenging. In the chaos that seems to be the norm now in the United States, I have a lot of worries, quite honestly, and I find little satisfaction in saying I told you so, especially since those to whom I would say it are mostly still in denial, with a small percentage in celebration. And that is frustrating. However, I have bought my ticket to Author Nation, so I have to assume that civilization will continue. I am putting in a proposal for a presentation. We'll see how that goes. Honestly, it's unlikely I can actually go because of that caregiving thing that I mentioned. But I am preparing to go just in case that unlikelihood surfaces. So that's my reflections from 2024. I appreciate the work that you continue to do to support the author community, and I'm looking forward to more creative output from you. Thank you, my friend.
Donn, thank you for that reflection. I do love hearing reflections not in my voice, but in your voice, so that's great. Donn, that the book you're talking about, How to Keep Creating When You're a Caregiver, I mean, this is such an important book, as I know you're very intimately aware of, Donn. But thank you for doing that, because I know that by you releasing that book, you're going to help so many other people. Because it's something you know intimately, it's something you experience. And Donn, the thought of getting a chance to see you at Author Nation in November, that I'm excited about the possibility. I understand the reality that it may not happen, but I am thrilled that I will get a chance to see you in person, my friend. So thank you so much for your reflection, or your reflections, I should say. And we're gonna keep on keeping on. And I do agree with you that there is no joy in saying I told you so. I am more of the mind of being more concerned for people, especially people who were deceived and lied to. And I want to reach out and hug those people, not mock them. Because we've all been fooled before. We've all been disappointed with things that we believed so strongly. And I think they need compassion and concern and care, just as much as the people whose very liberties are being stripped away from them. But again, thank you, Donn. On a positive note, I look forward to the possibility of getting to give you a big hug in person, my friend, or if you're not a hugger, then a big grin in person, or a high five, or a smile from across the room, whatever it is. But I do want to thank you for your reflections and for the work that you do. And now a reflection from Matty Dalrymple. You may recognize her voice from the previous Scribe Count ad that I played in this episode. All right, here is a reflection from Matty.
Well, the one reflection I was thinking about is this idea that is not a new idea, but the idea that everything you choose to do means something that you're de facto choosing not to do. And I think this is something that's really valuable to reflect on at the beginning of the year, because a lot of people are making resolutions. They say, I'm going to do exercise more, I'm going to do whatever. But I don't think people think about, okay, what am I going to stop doing in order to make time for exercising or make time for whatever it is that they're wanting to do. And this sort of came home to me very specifically because I decided that one of the things I wanted to do in the first quarter of 2025 was to experiment with LinkedIn as a way to lead people to my nonfiction platform, my nonfiction books, my consulting services, and so on. And I was thinking, well, what do I want to stop doing to make time to do that? And what I'm going to stop doing for the first quarter of 2025 is other social media. So it was, there are other reasons for doing that, but I was happy that I went into it saying, this is, there's only so many hours in the day. What am I going to stop doing if this is something I want to start doing? I'm wondering how that plays out generally, or is playing out for you right now.
You know what? It's really interesting because, and I'm glad you said that, because I'll often add things but forget to remove other things. It's so funny that you
I think
say
that you're the
yeah.
poster child of adding things without removing
Without
things,
without removing. No, it's so true, and I'm so glad you said that, because I was thinking about, yeah, and it's so funny because when I think of LinkedIn, LinkedIn's a platform for me that's really about business and stuff like that. So this brand, this Mark Leslie Lefebvre Stark brand, should be all over LinkedIn like a cheap suit. Whereas the Mark Leslie horror guy, urban fantasy, who cares? Like that's not for LinkedIn. For the way I use LinkedIn actually as a professional. It's kind of like, I think of it as our resumes are all connected.
Yeah,
It's like a
yeah.
resume kind of platform for me. It's kind of funny. I have other friends that have used it as more like this is where I share things about drinking and being fun. And so I was like, what?
Well,
Uh,
that's kind of one of the reasons I want to spend a little time on it, at least for one quarter, to get the zeitgeist of it and see if it's something that I want
yeah,
to plunge
that's
into more.
because again, that part of what you do, very similar to me. You've got the fiction person and stuff like that. Then you've got the business. I think that is probably a better use of time. I mean, I spent way too much time doom scrolling on Facebook this morning when I should have been working on stuff. Because I went
Yeah.
there because somebody tagged, a client of mine tagged me and wanted to see if I had some time sometime later today to spend half an hour just catching up on something. And so I went there to respond, and then instead of leaving to go back to what I was working on, I scrolled and was like,
Yeah.
why did I just waste 15 minutes that I'm
Yeah.
never going to get back? So I love the fact that that choosing that one thing is like, well, what other thing are you not going to do instead? A lot. Great. Fine. Thank you for that.
Sure.
I'm going to stop there because Matty and I went on and we just hung out and we chatted for a long time. So I'll probably either put that out as a special episode or a special for patrons. But thank you, Matty, for that initial reflection as well as the ongoing reflections that you and I had. Again, I'll share that in a separate episode. I do want to get this one out the door before I leave for Colorado. So I'll push that off to a future date, and I'm going to get to some other voices and reflections from the community. Up next, a reflection from Beth Cox, who writes under the name Beth Biss.
Well, this is about writer stuff, but the episode you did, I'm going to say in November, that was a rant. That was just your political rant. I appreciate that. I also appreciate when you talk about not going to, I think it was Inkers Con, as a personal statement. Dare I use the word protest? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but as a statement.
Fair enough. No, protest works. Thanks, Beth.
Yeah, okay. Um, I appreciate your sharing those thoughts and making it clear how you feel as a person who I just don't know how other people would see. I'm in the US and you are not. And I appreciating having that outside view because I feel it's sometimes very closed in. I'm afraid my words are gonna get smaller too. So
No, I
so
understand that.
knowing what other people think is helpful.
Thank you,
I
Beth.
appreciate that.
If it's okay, I'm going to respond to that. As it's important to me because I have a platform, because I have a voice. It's important for me to speak out for those who maybe don't have as big a voice or don't have as much privilege or a platform. And also it's a reminder to me of what we do as writers in general, not having to do with anything political or religious or anything like that. Just in general, when we share stories, when we write stories, we're telling other people that they're not alone. We're showing them people who are like them. I mean, for example, I mean, Matt and I didn't meet until way later in life, but I remember when first reading some of your stuff, Matt, about you as a kid, and I'm like, dude, were we separated at birth? I know we grew up in the same area and stuff like that, but we had so much in common about the things that we were passionate about. And I think as writers, we do that in general. And again, I'm not saying protest fiction or anything. Yes, I'm very vocal about things that I believe in and human rights and liberties and freedoms and stuff like that. And when people I love and care about get trampled on, of course I'm going to speak out because I can currently speak out. There may be a time when I can't, and I will regret not having said something. So thank you for that, Beth. I really appreciate it. It's really important to me. But again, it's an important reminder to us and what we do as writers. When we put our characters in situations, when we share their thoughts and feelings and emotions, the way I spoke out and you said, "Oh, it's really good to see what somebody outside of my country thinks about what's going on." Not only can you get that perspective, but potentially you feel like, okay, I may not be the only person who feels like, what are we living in a cuckoo clock, as Homer Simpson said.
And not talking about not bless everything, but I also want to have the chance for you to see me, actually physically see me. I'm on the YouTube channel for Draft to Digital most
Yeah,
Thursdays.
I see you
I'm
on
the
TV.
back.
Yeah, I see
Yeah,
it's good to see you actually. I
yes,
love
this
that.
is
That's
me.
really important. Yeah. Because yeah, on D to
This,
D we get to see I love the chatter in the comments. The people in the comments have this own wonderful community too, which is just amazing. So,
yeah,
yay.
yeah. And I'm not technologically advanced enough to get my picture up there. I mean,
Yeah.
technically I could get it up there, and part of me thinks it'd be nice to share that, but I don't know how to do it.
Ah, you mean like that's on YouTube or Facebook
Yeah,
or
on YouTube. There's a way to do it somehow. But at any rate, I definitely would come on here to say I found you personally through Draft to Digital and got
Oh,
interested in listening to your podcast because you were on that and saw you out in other ways.
the
So
crossovers are so beautiful. And you know what, Beth, you just given me a great idea. I'm trying to create more content that's useful for writers, short form content. I'm gonna create a video that shows how to upload a video for your YouTube profile. I'm gonna put that on YouTube, and then that way it can help you and potentially other people like, oh, how do I do that? So thank you. See, you're giving me great
sure.
ideas.
Yeah.
And now, a little something from Matthew Del Papa.
I wanted two things. I wanted to second Beth's comment on the political aspect, that it was nice to read your thoughts on that because you put a lot of time and effort into kind of phrasing a coherent uh response to the craziness in the world, which is always nice. There's a lot of people saying, "No, this is all bad" or "This is all great," but there was a little more nuance to your response, which I liked. And the other thing I wanted to do was compliment you on one of your podcasts there. I forget the title, but you were reflecting on an author who was bragging about $100,000 income, but you said he forgot to mention that he paid basically $100,000 in advertising. So the fact that you kind of pulled back the curtain on some of these brags that people are, the humble brags that people are putting out there, and revealed the kind of the workings of the business side of the industry. It was refreshing to me, and I shared that particular episode with several friends of mine who were feeling a little down in the dumps about the success of their self-published works, in that, they sold 100 copies or 150, and they thought, they were colossal failures. And I said, no, no. Listen, Mark's been in the industry for forever, worked in some, pretty high pressure environments there at Kobo, and had lots of jobs where he knows what he's talking about. And so I laid it out for them as you did, and it was very reassuring to all of us to hear. And so I wanted to thank you for that. And as Beth said, your draft to digital stuff, and even, like I said, your business side stuff for writers, who focus on the creative side. It sure is nice to have somebody with your expertise come in and kind of explain the stuff that is all mystery to us, and so it's not a mystery anymore. So thank you for that, Mark.
Thank you so much, Matt. I appreciate it. Again, that's a similar thing to what Beth and I were talking about is I've been in the industry for a long time, as you know, and it's a long, slow build, and it's not always, yes, it's lovely, it's wonderful, it's magical. We get what we get to do as readers, but as writers, I should say. But it's harder, and there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes. Again, like I think I shared my Kickstarter. It's like, yay, I made $5,000 in Kickstarter. And there are some people who go, oh, like, that's not anything compared to Brandon Sanderson or what Kevin J. Anderson can do, or people who already have millions of readers around the world. That's easy for them because they have a huge following. But for someone like me, $5,000 is a huge windfall. But guess what? When I look at all of the costs involved, now this wasn't advertising costs, but it was the costs involved in producing that book and putting out the quality stuff and everything. It was like, I maybe had a few $100 positive at the end of the day. So it may look like I'm rolling in the dough, but it's not always the case. And I do really do get frustrated when I see. And again, Ron Vital was a great example because, like, Ron, why did you do this? He's like, well, I don't want other authors to give up, and God bless him so much for caring about other authors. And I don't want writers to give up because we know the magic of what it is to be able to put stories out and share them with the world, and to take that away from somebody because they feel bad, because we all have this. I never will get rid of my imposter syndrome. It's never going away. I don't care who I get to hang out with and hobnob with and all the cool things I've gotten to do. I still have imposter syndrome about pretty much everything, and I know that's never going to go away. So if I'm feeling it, chances are someone else is feeling it, and they see a post in and go, "Oh my God, so and so made $100,000 last year." Well, yeah, but they spent 70,000 to get there, so maybe not so bad. And yes, I cannot help but reflect back when somebody shares some interesting stuff. Okay, next up for reflections is Guylaine.
I just wanted to thank you for that episode as well. I listened to it a few days back. And one thing I would like to know is not individual writers' income, because that's really none of my business.
Right.
But I would like to have more of a global picture, particularly for Canadian writers and even American writers, but for book publishing. Like, I've tried to, research online to get stats, and it's all very vague. You do get figures like, 90% don't, and for American publishers, I can't remember what it was, but I'm just making these figures up. Okay.
Yeah.
90% sell less than 5,000 copies, that kind of thing. But you don't really find that for Canadians. And I'm assuming it's going to be smaller just because we've got 1/10 of their population. But it would just be curious. Like, I've written nonfiction for many years, been published in magazines, and now that I'm retired, I'm working on a novel. I don't care about the money at all.
Mm-hmm.
I have a pension. I don't need the money. But just my typical writer's curiosity wants to know, like, what does the picture look like for writers out there who are selling novels in Canada or the United States? I mean, you do get figures, again, like, just for individuals, you'll hear, like Stephen King sold 50 billion copies of whatever, right?
Right.
I don't really care about the individual stats. I'm more looking for a global picture. Is there anything, has anything been done like that, or is it just so hush hush we don't talk about money because it's rude?
Well, no, it's not that. The challenge is it's still such a divided world. So
Yeah.
case in point, BookNet Canada does amazing surveys and studies and stats about Canadian stats. And I
Mhm.
was just looking at some for a book that I'm working on. I was looking at their 2023 reader stats about what preferred format readers have. But that's based just on Canadians. Now, we can maybe extrapolate and say, well, Canada and the US are so similar that you could probably extrapolate that. Print books are still by far 59%, for example, is the majority of people are reading print books. And ebooks have grown even more. They're like 20 something, and audiobooks are 13%. But that's also based on who filled out the survey. It's not actually every reader, it's every reader in Canada who filled out BookNet Canada survey. The
Right.
challenge we have when it comes to author earnings is I do know that the either the Canadian Authors Association or the Writers Union of Canada, and I'm members of both organizations. And I'll be honest, I confuse them all because it's the what is it, the Popular People's Front and the People's like for the life of Brian, like that. It's like
Yeah.
all the groups that are very similarly named.
Yeah.
You have groups like the Authors Guild in the US that does a survey of what members earn or whatever. The challenge is all of this information is so segmented. I
Yeah.
do know from stats from working in the Canadian industry and paying attention to the US, I think the stats were, and again, I don't have all the answers, but I know potentially why we don't potentially see the stats is there's nobody who's able to calculate. Amazon's probably the closest in the world to be able to give us numbers, and they don't share.
Yeah.
Um, the average book in the US sells less than 1,000 copies,
Yeah.
and in Canada maybe that's 100. And so Beth, you have a thought on that?
I have there. I have a thought. I know that Ally, the Alliance of Independent Authors,
Yeah,
they do some work at gathering statistics and sharing that.
right.
But of course, you have to be a member with them and you have to turn your information into them. So
If you
it would
filled
not
out
be
the survey,
complete,
yeah, and
but
it
that
probably
would,
doesn't include traditionally published
it
info either,
doesn't,
right? So
it's
that's
just
the yeah,
independence, right? So, but
yeah,
that would give you somewhat of perspective of what
right,
independent authors do.
yeah,
Yeah.
Kind of, I mean, of course, it is if you're a member and you turn it in and blah blah blah, but that
yeah.
would give a little bit more of a picture as to what's going on with.
Yeah, there are like the author earnings report. I know I fill out a survey from BookNet Canada every year about my earnings as an author and where the earnings come from traditional publishing, self-publishing, stuff like formats. I do everything I can to share as much as I can so they have the data. But again, there's nobody capturing it. And I could come back with stats that'll make most authors who've ever sold a book ever, even if they've only sold one a year, I can come back with stats that'll make you feel good about selling one book a year because the reality is that most books don't sell at all. And I hate to say that because I'm a very optimistic person, but the reality is most books published never sell. I ended up cutting quite a bit of this conversation. I'll probably see if I can use it somewhere else. But we were in a discussion, and Matt brought up a really great point, not only about how we could sell certain books, but also about the impact of what the pandemic had on somebody who has mobility issues.
Like again, I don't know what your situation is per se. If you can get out for a day or two, if you can make it to the library, but if you can kind of form a brand that merges with your community, people will support you, and then you have a base. And for me, that's always been key. Is that I know I can sell 100 books no matter what. I might not sell 500, but I know I can sell 100. I'll break even, guaranteed. So I don't mind putting the money out to self-publish. I don't mind promising my publisher that I can sell out, the book launch because I know I can do that in my hometown. After that, it's a crapshoot. But yeah, and as Mark was saying, online, I know a lot of disabled people like myself feel guilty saying thank you for COVID because a lot of people suffered through it and it was bad. But for anybody who was trying to use social media and programs like Zoom, they were very, very rare before COVID, and now everybody has them and everybody uses them, and nobody thinks twice. Like I've gone to conventions in Europe and the States that I couldn't attend in person because they have a electronic component, and that has been for people like myself quite the benefit. So I feel guilty saying that, but it has been it has made a big difference for me, and I'll stop at that. Thank you.
I agree, Matt. For me personally, I've been homebound since 2017. So for me, suddenly having everybody at home, it was like, now do you understand what I'm talking about? Now do you get it now? Of course, most people have gone back out into the world, and I'm still at home. But people got a tiny glimpse of what it's like. It's frustrating to hear people talk about, why can't we get back to normal now? Or they get angry when they see me with a mask on. I'm like, you don't understand what a risk it is for me to be here right now.
Yeah.
So there've been positive and negative to it, but the proliferation of virtual things has been wonderful. Just such a benefit for me to have so many virtual options now that I feel like I could run my business virtually. I mean, it was possible before, but COVID really made it really, really possible because everybody had to go online. And so the technology proliferated, the understanding of the technology proliferated, that kind of thing.
And later on in that hangout, in that conversation, Edwin Downward joined us. I love hearing Edwin's thoughts, various episodes over the years, but it was great to get to sort of hang out and get some of those reflections live.
I mean, that's why I keep coming back to Stark Reflections to begin with. There's always something fascinating there. And let's be honest here, and I've said this before, one of the great things about your podcast is the reflections at the end of the reflection. That second look at everything that's going on while it's still fresh in the head, rather than I've moved on to another podcast and now I get to think about it again when I get home. Because 99% of the time I'm in the car when I'm listening.
Wow.
That's just who I am.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. And I appreciate your reflections. And it is hard when you're in the car to share your own thoughts. So thanks for making an effort to do that. I appreciate that. I really do. It's always great to see what you're thinking about when you listen to an episode.
That's good to know. And I'm sitting there, I came in right when you're doing that whole discussion of e-readers. And I mean, I'm old school, new school. I mean, I have an independent app on my phone, and then I download the EPUB to my private library, and then read it on this independent app. So, the only thing I have to do there is periodically adjust the size of the font on the screen so that I can read whatever it is I've got.
And that works nicely for you.
I don't know about the Kobo setup because I've heard so many horror stories about the Kindle and books being pulled off the Kindle and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I do the same thing with my music library. I don't stream anything. I buy and download the MP3 into my own private library. So it's my private library on my private device. And I can access it anywhere I want, including anywhere, lots of places I go where I don't have access to Wi-Fi.
So that was a fun hangout. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. This is an insert audio bit. I had recorded comments and imported data, etc., prior to leaving my home. I'm doing this little short bit from Colorado Springs in a hotel room, and I'm inserting this because I did get an additional comment from Kathy Mack, who sent that to me, and I'm actually able to slip that in. So I'm going to slip in one final reflection from my awesome reflective community, and then get back to my closing statement, as well as the additional bonus reflection from outside the community that returns to a reflection from inside my perspective. Anyways, here is Kathy Mack.
Hi, Mark. Kathy Mack here. You know, between the two of us, there's an age gap of 8 years. And so that puts me at the age of somebody who would have been your babysitter. So whenever you get on the Stark Reflections podcast in all the years that I've been supporting it, and you've got a terrible cold, or you've been sick, or you're very stressed for taking on more commitments than it's humanly possible to do, I always feel like I should be pouring advice and possibly chicken soup into my computer to send to you. Because you have said some transformative things for me over the years that I've been listening to the Stark Reflections. Most recently, I want to thank you for pointing out that people who post about how much they've made don't often tell how much they invested to make that. I found that revelatory. It kind of goes along with that relaxed author idea, which I've been trying to embody, that sometimes the amount you make isn't worth the stress and the effort and the commitment and everything that you put into making it. So just relax about it and do what you can. I love Stark Reflections podcast because you are such a humanist. You consistently develop your empathy. I know it's kind of like your author branding, that you're showing us a specific persona when you do the Stark Reflections podcast, but I also know that persona is a big part of the person that you are. So I really appreciate that. And as for your meetup that nobody came to, I feel like the loser for not having found out about it in time to come and spend a whole freaking hour with Mark Leslie Lefebvre. What a gift that would have been, and I missed it. So congratulations, Mark. It took a lot of dedication and work to do 400 episodes. Long may you continue.
And I want to say thank you, Kathy, for that lovely, I will call it a chicken soup comment. It did help. It did nourish me, and it did lift me up, and I appreciate that. Actually, getting comments from listeners has that effect on me, and I was so glad that I got your comment in time to squeeze it into the edits so I can have this ready to go, because I got it before all the main stuff is happening at the conference, which starts on Wednesday. Today, Tuesday, was setup day. So it was a lot of work, but it's not going to be the same as the full conference day. Because, again, I was able to get back to my room at a decent time tonight so I could get some work done. And I appreciate your wonderful, kind, generous thoughts. The reality is yes, you are correct. That is a persona I put on, but that persona is me. It's just an aspect of me. And I try to be very authentic with that as well. And so the other thing you had mentioned about the Hangout is, you know what I realized when I did the Hangout, just hanging out and chatting with folks, and I'm going to cut back to our regularly scheduled program where I talk about that Hangout. I am going to endeavor to do more of those, try and get maybe one Hangout a month, try and set it at different dates and times, and most likely on a weekend, as a lot of people are working during the week, but I know people work on the weekends too. So I'm going to try and set those up on a more regular basis for people who just want to hang out and chat with other members of the Stark Reflections community. So thanks for that, Kathy. That and you know, some of the clips from the Hangout you heard already reminded me of how much I value that. Okay. Now we're going to cut from Mark, who's recording this on February 4th in Colorado Springs, to the Mark who was recording on whatever day Sunday was. Was that the 2nd? Sunday the 2nd of February in Waterloo, Ontario. So that was an absolutely fun Hangout. I will put together my chat with Matty as well as the full chat. I got permission from everyone who attended that I can share. So it will be coming in some sort of special episode. I'm not sure if it's just going to be for patrons only or bonus episodes. I will figure that out in the near future. But I want to thank everyone for sharing their wonderful thoughts. I'm going to share a reflection that the Prime Minister of Canada recently stated, and don't worry, there is a point to this, but I'm going to share a clip from a press conference that Justin Trudeau held on, I believe it was in the evening of February 1st. And I'm going to reflect on the trade war that's currently in place between Canada and the United States, or between, I should say, the United States and Canada and Mexico and seemingly other countries, etc. But I'm going to focus on Canada and U.S. because that is a relationship that is very, very important to not just me, but so many Canadians. So here's Prime Minister Trudeau's reflection.
Tonight, first, I want to speak directly to Americans, our closest friends and neighbors. This is a choice that, yes, will harm Canadians, but beyond that, it will have real consequences for you, the American people. As I have consistently said, tariffs against Canada will put your jobs at risk, potentially shutting down American auto assembly plants and other manufacturing facilities. They will raise costs for you, including food at the grocery stores and gas at the pump. They will impede your access to an affordable supply of vital goods crucial for U.S. security, such as nickel, potash, uranium, steel, and aluminum. They will violate the free trade agreement that the President and I, along with our Mexican partner, negotiated and signed a few years ago. But it doesn't have to be this way. As President John F. Kennedy said many years ago, geography has made us neighbors, history has made us friends, economics has made us partners, and necessity has made us allies. That rang true for many decades prior to President Kennedy's time in office and in the decades since. From the beaches of Normandy to the mountains of the Korean Peninsula, from the fields of Flanders to the streets of Kandahar, we have fought and died alongside you. During your darkest hours, during the Iranian hostage crisis, those 444 days we worked around the clock from our embassy to get your innocent compatriots home. During the summer of 2005, when Hurricane Katrina ravaged your great city of New Orleans, or mere weeks ago, when we sent water bombers to tackle the wildfires in California. During the day the world stood still, September 11th, 2001, when we provided refuge to stranded passengers and planes, we were always there, standing with you, grieving with you, the American people. Together, we've built the most successful economic, military, and security partnership the world has ever seen. A relationship that has been the envy of the world. Yes, we've had our differences in the past, but we've always found a way to get past them. As I've said before, if President Trump wants to usher in a new golden age for the United States, the better path is to partner with Canada, not to punish us. Canada has critical minerals, reliable and affordable energy, stable democratic institutions, shared values, and the natural resources you need. Canada has the ingredients necessary to build a booming and secure partnership for the North American economy, and we stand at the ready to work together. Let's take a moment to talk about our shared border. Our border is already safe and secure, but there's always more work to do. Less than 1% of fentanyl, less than 1% of illegal crossings into the United States come from Canada. But hearing concerns from both Canadians and Americans, including the American president himself, we're taking action. We launched a $1.3 billion border plan that is already showing results, because we too are devastated by the scourge that is fentanyl, a drug that has torn apart communities and caused so much pain and torment for countless families across Canada, just like in the United States. A drug that we too want to see wiped from the face of this earth. A drug whose traffickers must be punished. As neighbors, we must work collaboratively to fix this. Unfortunately, the actions taken today by the White House split us apart instead of bringing us together. Tonight, I am announcing Canada will be responding to the U.S. trade action with 25% tariffs against $155 billion worth of American goods. This will include immediate tariffs on $30 billion worth of goods as of Tuesday, followed by further tariffs on $125 billion worth of American products in 21 days' time to allow Canadian companies and supply chains to seek to find alternatives. Our response will also be far-reaching and include everyday items such as American beer, wine, and bourbon, fruits and fruit juices, including orange juice, along with vegetables, perfume, clothing, and shoes. It'll include major consumer products like household appliances, furniture, and sports equipment, and materials like lumber and plastics, along with much, much more. And as part of our response, we are considering, with the provinces and territories, several non-tariff measures, including some relating to critical minerals, energy, procurement, and other partnerships. We will stand strong for Canada. We will stand strong to ensure our countries continue to be the best neighbors in the world. With all that said, I also want to speak directly to Canadians in this moment. I'm sure many of you are anxious, but I want you to know we are all in this together. The Canadian government, Canadian businesses, Canadian organized labor, Canadian civil society, Canada's premiers, and tens of millions of Canadians from coast to coast to coast are aligned and united. This is Team Canada at its best.
At the same time, I do have something to ask of you. I would ask you to remain united. Many of us will be deeply affected. A lot of people will go through dark times. I'm asking you to support one another, to be there for your friends, your neighbors, and your fellow Canadians. From sea to sea, Canadians are different. We speak different languages. We have different beliefs and opinions. We have different ideas. But when we remain united, we are stronger.
And now is also the time to choose Canada. There are many ways for you to do your part. It might mean checking the labels at the supermarket and picking Canadian-made products. It might mean opting for Canadian rye over Kentucky bourbon, or foregoing Florida orange juice altogether. It might mean changing your summer vacation plans to stay here in Canada and explore the many national and provincial parks, historical sites, and tourist destinations our great country has to offer. C'est temps de choisir des produits d'ici.
It's time to choose Canadian products and to support Canadian businesses, to support our farmers, our producers, our workers, our business owners, our artists.
It might mean doing all of these things or finding your own way to stand up for Canada. In this moment, we must pull together because we love this country. We pride ourselves on braving the cold during the long winter months. We don't like to beat our chests, but we're always out there waving the maple leaf loudly and proudly to celebrate an Olympic gold medal. On a notre propre identité.
We have a distinct identity. We have our own history and our values. Canadians are welcoming, open, innovative, and ambitious. We prefer to solve our differences with diplomacy, but we're prepared to fight if it's required.
Canada is home to bountiful resources, breathtaking beauty, and a proud people who've come from every corner of the globe to forge a nation with a unique identity worth embracing and celebrating. We don't pretend to be perfect, but Canada is the best country on earth. There's nowhere else that I and our 41 million strong family would rather be, and we will get through this challenge, just as we've done countless times before, together. Thank you. Merci. Vive le Canada.
So this was an inspiring speech from Canada's Prime Minister. I wanted to share it. I shared clips of it in Canada. For anyone who's not familiar, our Prime Minister speaks in both official languages, French and English. I cut more than half of that and several of the French clips near the beginning, just to try and get a good summary for the message to Canadians. Now, speaking of messaging, something happened yesterday in Canada, in Ottawa, at an NHL game. The Ottawa Senators were playing against an American team, and during the singing of the national anthem, the audience, primarily, probably 95% Canadians, booed during the U.S. national anthem. That is so not Canadian to do that. I remember several years ago, it was a Canadian-American game, and during the singing of O Canada, there was a tech malfunction, and the microphone for the singer didn't work. So everyone in the audience, and this was in an American city, sang the Canadian national anthem aloud. They probably only sang it in English, not English and French, which is what we do here in Canada. But that is the spirit of our friendship. That is the spirit of the allyship and the beauty of what Canada and America is together. What happened in Ottawa last night is just so devastating, because that's not us. But it is us when we're pushed, and when we're backed into a corner by a narcissistic felon grifter bully. And we're going to stand together, and we're going to fight for what's right. I feel bad for the American players on both the Canadian team and the American team as they do trade players. I feel bad for the singer in Ottawa last night who was singing the national anthem. I love listening to other countries' national anthems. It's just this wonderful moment of pride. And when I hear both the Canadian national anthem and the U.S. national anthem, I feel pride. Because you feel proud of your friends. You love them. You want to support them. So I hate this position that we've been forced into. And that being said, I love my American friends, and I will continue to love my American friends, because this is a long-term thing. This is not just these 4 years of this narcissistic bully Hitler wannabe, who is, by the way, playing by the very same playbook. He divided the U.S. and has spent years, over 10 years, working at that division. Very craftily, very, very incredibly powerfully, by finding things to point out and outright lie to get people to hate one another. Both the people who believe the lies that he's sharing, because a lot of the lies have to do, the people who believe the lies care about other people, and they care about what the negative thing is, about the harm that's allegedly being done. They're not bad people. They've just fallen for somebody who spent an entire lifetime as a genius grifter. The man can't speak to save his life. He sounds like a babbling idiot when he goes off the teleprompter. But he is a genius grifter, and he's really good at getting people riled up. Both the people that he is seeking to empower with hatred and fear of the other, as well as those on the opposite side of the aisle who see the lies and are outraged and incensed that anyone could fall prey to all of those lies. In the same way that I love my American neighbors, and I know that the hearts of most Americans, yes, even those who, I don't know how, voted for this felon a second time? Are you kidding me? I know they're not bad people. I know they're not Nazis. I know that they're trying to do the right thing. There are some, of course, who are just hateful, horrible, but I honestly believe in the goodness of most people. And I believe that there are really intelligent people who have, unfortunately, fallen prey to overwhelming confirmation bias and the siloed nature of the media and how sometimes they only see the things that they see. There's people I grew up with from my own high school that I know are not bad people, but they seem to have basically are mimicking the terminology of the anti-wokeness and the anti-DEI and all of that. I know they're not bad people. And I don't want to, as I said earlier, I don't want to be smug and say, I told you so. I want to reach a hand out and say, it's okay, we all make mistakes. We're here for you. And to my American friends who may be listening to this, I look forward to the long-term continued friendship and allyship that our two nations have. Yes, we're butting heads right now. We know why. This isn't anything most Americans even wanted, and it's not something that Canadians want in general. But we will fight, and when the fighting is over, we will continue to be allies and friends. It will perhaps make that friendship stronger. That's it for this reflection. Thank you so much for listening to, if you've been around for all 400 episodes, well, thank you. Has anyone actually listened to all 400 episodes besides me? I'd be curious to know. But I want to thank everyone for participating in this podcast in general, in this episode, sharing the reflections. It's really important to me. I love hearing what you guys are thinking about, and I love this community so much. No matter where you are in the world, whether you're in the US, whether you're in Canada, whether you're in Germany, Birgit, and other people around the world, because I do know that there are people from around the world listening to this, know that I know that I am honored. I'm honored that you're listening, and I appreciate you. And I'm hoping if I can keep this up, I'd love to be here with you for episode 800. And that would be potentially in another 8 years. I don't know. I can't do the math, but episode 800 coming up in a year near you in the not too distant future. And maybe in episode 800, I'd love to be able to reflect on how I overreacted in one of my reflections here, or some of my reflections. But that's it. That is it. I'm going to turn the microphone off. I'm going to say thank you again so much for listening. Ways you can support this podcast are leaving a review, of course, and also sharing this episode or any episode of the podcast with someone that you think would find value in it. Thanks again for listening to the Stark Reflections podcast, and thank everyone for your contribution to this community reflections. This is Mark Leslie Lefebvre, and until next week and next episode, here's wishing you great writing and good Stark Reflections.
Thank you for listening to the Stark Reflections podcast. You can find show notes for each episode at starkreflections.ca.
The music for this podcast, Laser Groove, was composed and produced by Kevin MacLeod. Check out more of Kevin's great music at incomptech.com.